I'm Liz Rivera. I'm the Gem State Medium. Welcome back. I took a tour or a walkthrough, psychic sweep, whatever you want to call it, through the Elks Lodge here in Idaho Falls. I've been asked several times by several people over the years, or told I need to go through. It finally came down to somebody getting a hold of me and actually making it happen, because they've had sightings and strange occurrences there. So I finally went in. I bet I got 5-10 feet in through the door, and I started, there's just it's almost like a spinny feeling or a lightheaded feeling. And I believe that it's just when the energy shifts from what it should normally be, we're all used to when there's ghosts in there. And that's not necessarily meaning that they were there at that moment, but you could definitely tell that there was something going on in this building. So you get a real good idea, like when you first walk in, like what's going on, and then you're kind of on alert after that, because you know. One of the first places they took me to was into a private room where it was members only, and there was a big long table in the center of the room. The top part was made of wood. It looked pretty unique. A lot of times when I go into locations, I'll put my hands on things just to pick up the energy through that. But as I was walking around, as soon as I put my hand on the table, I saw men sitting around the table. They were well dressed, but kind of a casual, relaxed. They all looked like they were probably from between the 50s to late 60s. Like I told them, I could almost push it up towards the very beginning of the 70s, but I think things changed after that, which they did confirm after that things had started to change, where they were a little more open, because it used to just be men only back then. So they were only men. But what I saw them doing was smoking, drinking, hanging out. And I also thought that there were probably some extenuating circumstances that there would have been some women let in, some special women to come in and hang out. And they kind of agreed and said that it was just kind of a different time. It was just men, and on occasion or certain times they would have, these card games and, well, the card games, but then they would have other things going on too. Okay. When I had put my hand on the table, what they told me about the table later, because I asked them, it seemed kind of special. They said it had been made out of the bowling alley downstairs. I thought it was probably centrally located to that room, as I've thought about it during this whole time, because we did go in where the downstairs where the bowling alley was originally, where they had lifted the floor. Then they made the tables out of the floor, so they salvaged. Anyway, so some of that residual could have been from down there also. Once we got down in the basement, I can tell you that in a minute, but it was very similar. The bowling alley was a little more for families and the guys, and for different things going on. What they were doing sometimes was after hours, when that bowling alley would have been closed, but they were, same thing as upstairs, but there too. Okay. After we went into those two rooms, you go into this big room, and it's where they held their lodge meetings. So when you walk in, it even felt like a special room. So we were standing in there, and there were chairs around where the walls were. But one of the gentlemen, I cannot remember his name, he walked in and he stepped up, and there was like a podium, like a, it wasn't that high off the ground, but
A speaker's box.
Yeah. And then there was the podium that somebody would stand up against, but they had their things on, like the pictures on the walls and all of that up there. Anyway, the point is, it looked like a very important room and an important place, and that's the way it felt when I walked in. What was interesting was the man who was giving us the tour, or me the tour of the place, and taking me to these different areas that would probably be off limits or maybe doors locked. He's the one who went in and then stepped up on the podium area. There were at least 3, and I think there might have been 4 because they came up behind me, but there was at least 3 ghosts. Like, they just came in. It was like they were called to order. Like, this is what they do every single time they still have meetings. But as soon as he put his feet up there and started to walk back towards where the pictures were and stuff, that's when the ghosts came from behind and just kind of stood there. And I saw him come up, and like I said, there was at least 3, because I felt 2 on one side and 1 over here. But because they were here, it felt like somebody was behind me too. So I wasn't sure if there was 4. So anyway, so they came in, and like I said, anytime that they have a meeting in there and somebody gets up there to call their sessions to order or whatever they're doing, that's what these ghosts still do. I mean, they were hardcore members. In my opinion, that's what I gathered from them. This was very serious. This was their place. That's why they're still there. These guys, so when there's a meeting, they're there still. The one room where I put my hand on the table, I would say most of that was residual.
Okay.
And residual is like a tape recorder. It's so embedded in what it was. So I was seeing what they used to do there. And sometimes when you have high energy situations like that, that's when you get the residual, when it's over and over and over again that they do this all the time. And it's that energy, kind of sets everything to that location. I did see a gentleman in there who was a little, and I saw him pretty clear. He was a little heavier set, kind of a more round face, and he had glasses. And he was mostly upstairs. After we left that room, we just kind of turned a little bit, and there's the kitchen off to the side. And there's like a railing where you would get your food and go past, and the kitchen's on the other side, just like a regular cafeteria. So as we started walking down that way, and they were explaining, we used to feed 3,000 or 2,000 people at a time. These were huge events back in the 50s and 60s and stuff, that we had this many members, and they were these big events and all of that. As soon as we started walking down that way, I saw somebody in one of the kitchen doors. Like he leaned out, like, and looked at me. So I showed you the picture where I saw or you can see the shadow. That's the area where there was like a hallway. And so back in that door, as we walked past, he looked out. Like, he looked back like that. So I think it was something that he always did. So when we actually went in the kitchen, I could see him and pick him up much better. So at first, while I wasn't, when we walked past and I saw him literally, but it was just really quick. Somebody peeked out and went back in. When we went into the kitchen, I thought I saw somebody go like through the wall, kind of off, but it was so quick. But what I was picking up in there was that there was one man in particular, this was his job and it was very important. So what he was doing when he was looking out the door, he was looking at the people getting ready to eat. Like, is everything out there? Are all my workers doing what they're supposed to be? Like, is everything set? Because this is important. This was his job and his life. It was that important to him back in the day. He's also, I would say he's Hispanic. The little video clips I gave you, I just had a friend, she sent me a couple things where she was recording just with her phone, so the audio's really hard to hear. But when I was talking, I said, would they have been Mexican? And he said, yeah, absolutely. They, back then, he says, of course, things were a lot different back then. So that was their, the people in the kitchen, predominantly. So that made sense to me, and it made sense to who I was seeing. And boy, he was a good cook, and that was his job, and he wanted everything the right way. So I think that's probably why he was there, is because it was so serious.